Welcome back to the Deep Dive, ready for a fascinating topic.
Always.
Today we're exploring the marriage of Prophet Muhammad to Aisha. It often sparks debate and misunderstanding, so let's try to understand it better.
Sounds good.
Our source today is an article from Egypt's Dar Al-Ifta. It answers a question about this very marriage.
Interesting.
Now, this is a sensitive topic. We need to approach it with respect, focusing on the historical context.
Of course.
The Dar Al-Ifta highlights the close bond between the Prophet and Aisha's father, Abu Bakr. He was a beloved companion.
Right.
The Prophet even said he felt deeply indebted to Abu Bakr. Couldn't repay him, actually.
Kinship and loyalty were so central back then in 7th century Arabia.
Exactly. This marriage wasn't just personal, It also strengthened that bond between them.
It definitely had political and social implications, too.
Now, get this. The article mentions a divine command. Angel Gabriel appeared to the Prophet,
Oh, wow.
showed him an image of Aisha, and revealed she would be his wife.
This fits into the belief system of the time. Divine commands were direct instructions from God.
So for believers, this wasn't just any arranged marriage, right?
Exactly. It was part of a divine plan.
Fascinating. Okay, so the article then tells us how the proposal happened. A woman named Khawla bint Hakim suggested the match.
To Abu Bakr and his wife.
Right. But Abu Bakr hesitated at first. He was worried about whether it was even allowed.
Because of the concept of brotherhood in Islam.
I'm not sure I follow. How does brotherhood play into this?
Well, in Islam, converts are like brothers and sisters, spiritually. And this bond has implications, so Abu Bakr was worried it might make the marriage unlawful.
I see. So even with divinely ordained marriages, there were still rules and complexity.
Absolutely. It wasn't always simple.
The article says the Prophet clarified that it was permissible, though, even within the framework of that brotherhood.
Shows how interpretations could adapt to specific situations.
This is where it gets even more interesting. The article mentions Aisha was already engaged to someone else. Yeah. This really highlights the cultural norms of the time, Betrothal at a young age was common.
And Aisha's case helps us understand how engagements could be broken off back then.
So Abu Bakr, being a man of his word, went to the other family to discuss it.
Right.
And they ended up withdrawing their proposal.
Paving the way for Aisha to marry the Prophet.
Exactly. But it's important to remember the historical context. This was 7th century Arabia, right?
Completely different customs and practices than what we're used to today.
It's so easy to judge the past through our modern lens. But we have to understand the norms of the time.
To grasp the true dynamics of this marriage.
Couldn't agree more. Judging historical figures by today's standards can lead to so many misunderstandings.
Totally.
Now, the Dar Al-Ifta goes on to describe the love between the Prophet and Aisha. They talk about their playful races, for instance.
Oh, sweet.
And there's a saying attributed to the Prophet, Aisha's love is like a tight knot in my heart.
These anecdotes offer a glimpse into their personal interactions beyond all the debates.
Right, it reminds us that this was a real relationship with its own complexities and emotions.
Absolutely. Helps us understand their bond, even with the age difference that's often debated today.
And the article addresses that too. It says those concerns weren't raised back then by the Prophet's contemporaries.
So they're arguing that we should analyze it within the historical context, not impose modern values.
Exactly. The Dar Al-Ifta seems to suggest we can learn from history without condoning every aspect of it.
That's a really interesting perspective.
Let's shift focus now. The article highlights Aisha's intellectual contributions. She was a scholar and a jurist, actively involved in religious discussions and interpretations.
Right. It's important to remember she was more than just the Prophet's wife.
Absolutely. A respected figure of knowledge and authority in her own right.
For sure.
And the article even gives an example of her differing with other companions on how to handle the covering of the Kaaba.
The Kaaba.
Yeah, the most sacred site in Islam in Mecca. Aisha suggested cutting it up and using the proceeds for charity.
Wow, that was a bold suggestion.
Right, and they actually ended up adopting that view. Shows her independent thinking and her willingness to challenge the norm.
Even when those norms were supported by prominent figures.
Exactly. This has already given me a much more nuanced view of Aisha. I want to learn more about her scholarship and her legacy.
Me too. And the Dar Al-Ifta article has some great insights into that.
We'll delve deeper into it next time. This is captivating stuff.
It is.
If you're enjoying it too, consider subscribing to Mind Mosaic. Your support helps us bring you these deep dives into history and culture.
We appreciate it. Before the break, we were saying how Aisha's intellect went beyond just being the Prophet's wife.
You mentioned the Dar Al-Ifta article talks about that. What else does it say about her scholarship?
Well, it mentions how other scholars back then, big names, recognized her expertise. Like, there's this guy, Ata ibn Abi Rabah.
Okay.
He was a famous jurist, and he called Aisha the top of all jurists.
Wow, high praise. Coming from him, that's saying something.
Totally. And it wasn't just him. The article quotes al-Zuri, too, another leading scholar. He also talked about how knowledgeable Aisha was.
So she was really seen as an authority on Islamic law, not just respected, but like a leading expert.
Exactly. And not just on one specific thing, she contributed to different branches of Islamic law, gave interpretations, rulings on all sorts of issues.
It's really making me rethink the role of women in early Islam. You know, you always hear certain things, but
It challenges that common perception, doesn't it?
for sure. Aisha's story shows they were active participants in religious discussions, contributing to Islamic thought in a major way.
Definitely. And think about the social norms back then. Pretty amazing.
Totally. So her contributions as a scholar, as a teacher, they helped shape how people understood Islamic law.
For generations to come, even. And she wasn't afraid to debate, challenge views. That solidified her reputation as a serious intellect.
You know, it's one thing to read about these historical figures in a book, but it's another to really dive in like this.
To see them as real people.
Yes, with personalities, with contributions.
It's through deep dives like this that we get a richer understanding of history.
Speaking of, the article ends on a poignant note. It says that Prophet Muhammad died in Aisha's arms.
Wow.
Brings the story full circle. Reminds us of that deep bond they shared.
It emphasizes her role as a witness to those pivotal moments in early Islam, too.
Powerful image. It really captures their relationship, you know, and Aisha's importance in the Prophet's life.
It's a reminder of the human side of history.
Yes.
Behind all the dates and events and theology, there were real people with their own stories, their own emotions.
So why does this matter to us today? What can we take away from this centuries later?
That's a great question. I think exploring figures like Aisha, especially when religion's involved, it pushes us to think about the connections between faith, culture, personal relationships.
It makes you realize how much our own views are shaped by the times we live in. It's easy to judge the past.
Absolutely. And I think Aisha's story in particular shows how important it is to consider different perspectives.
Like, the Dar Al-Ifta frames her marriage within that context of Abu Bakr, the divine command.
Right.
But they also acknowledge the criticisms, especially the modern ones, about the age difference.
Yeah, and while they say those concerns weren't there back then, they still address them.
It's a good reminder that history can be interpreted in different ways. An open discussion is key to understanding it all.
Definitely.
It's fascinating how Aisha's story is bigger than just the controversy. Her intellectual contributions, her legacy as a scholar, are huge.
Exactly. It's important to see her as a complex person, not just defined by her marriage, but by her own intellect, her own agency.
What I find really inspiring is how she voiced her opinions, even when they were different. That example with the Kaaba's covering.
Shows her independent thinking, for sure.
Totally. She wasn't afraid to challenge the status quo, even when big names supported it.
And her expertise was respected, clearly. We see that in the praise from scholars like Ata and al-Zuri.
Her contributions to Islamic law are undeniable, and her legacy still inspires people today. This deep dive has really shown us how multifaceted Aisha's life was. A wife, a scholar, a teacher, a witness to history.
Her story shows how much individuals can shape their own narratives, leave a lasting impact.
It's been an insightful journey exploring this topic.
I agree. History is full of fascinating figures, and their lives offer valuable lessons, perspectives that still matter today.
Well, folks, that brings us to the end of our deep dive into the life and legacy of Aisha.
We hope you found it insightful, thought-provoking.
We encourage you to think about what stood out to you, to consider the different perspectives we discussed.
Remember, history isn't just about dates and events. It's about understanding the people who shaped those times and grappling with the complexities of their stories.
Before we go, a final thought-provoking question. How does understanding the historical context of Aisha's marriage challenge our own assumptions about love, relationships, societal norms throughout history?
We hope this deep dive has sparked your curiosity about history.
If you enjoyed it, be sure to subscribe to Mind Mosaic for more content like this.
As an emerging channel, your support means the world to us.
Thank you for joining us on this intellectual journey. Until next time, keep those minds curious. Aisha's story really makes you think, doesn't it? About how we view the past, how complex history can be.
It does. And how individuals can leave a mark that lasts for centuries, shape their own narratives.
Before we wrap up, I'm curious, what stood out to you most in this deep dive? What really resonated?
I think it's that reminder that history is about people, not just facts and dates. Real people who lived and loved, made choices in their own time.
Yeah.
Aisha's story, with all the controversy, the intellectual brilliance, the relationships, it shows that human side of history.
It's been eye-opening for sure. For our listeners, I hope this sparked some curiosity about Aisha and about early Islamic history in general.
We always encourage you to explore further. Draw your own conclusions about her legacy, about this remarkable woman.
And if you enjoyed this deep dive, want to explore more thought-provoking topics with us, be sure to subscribe to Mind Mosaic.
Your support means a lot as we grow this channel.
Thank you for joining us on this intellectual journey. Until next time, keep those minds curious.
See you next time.